Hey everybody, welcome back to Brutal Doom. I am your host, Willie B. Coyote, and in the last video I blasted my way through Brutal Doom Episode 1, now I'm going to blast my way through Brutal Doom Episode 2. As always, let's get the self-promotion done right out of the gate. Be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. It helps me grow and hopefully get paid as well. Without further ado, here we go. I'm going to be doing the Episode 2, which is The Shores of Hell now. And I'll also be doing Power Fantasy again, because I don't really want to die all that much. You know, as I was getting ready to do this next video, I was thinking about the 2005 Doom movie starring Carl Urban and Dwayne Johnson. And it got me thinking about how there is absolutely no excuse nowadays for adaptations of video games in either live action or animation to be bad nowadays. Like Castlevania, HBO's The Last of Us, you know, Arcane League of Legends on Netflix. There is absolutely no excuse for video game adaptations to be bad nowadays. Like one of the most notorious recent examples of this, well, going back, one of the best examples of that was the 2005 Doom movie, which I do enjoy, even though it is objectively a bad movie. It's one of those movies that falls under the category of being so bad that it's good, at least. You know, and, you know, I think had it been executed better and actually followed the source material much closer, it would have been a lot better than what we got, which was basically bargain bin aliens reskinned as Doom. But they did the 2005 Doom movie. It wasn't very good. No one really liked it, especially Dwayne Johnson. He didn't like it especially. Like, when the more recent direct-to-video Doom movie, Doom Annihilation, was announced, he immediately took to Twitter to roast it and talk about how the 2005 Doom movie was probably one of the worst movies he's been in. And it got me thinking about Sorry, this is my second attempt at, this is actually my third attempt at recording this, and I was doing a much better job of communicating this whole monologue, the first time through, but anyways, so 2005 Doom movie comes out, it's not very good. They try again in 2019 with Doom Annihilation, and that movie, no joke, literally looked like an Uwe Boll movie. And if anyone who grew up in the 2000s and followed video games in that era knows exactly what I'm talking about when I say the name Uwe Boll. Like, Uwe Boll is a German filmmaker, former filmmaker, because he quit and he runs restaurants now. But he did a whole bunch of really bad adaptations of video games in the early 2000s. Like, he did that terrible Far Cry movie. He did Blood Rain, which also wasn't very good. He did Postal, which also wasn't very good. Like, and the big reason why none of his movies were very good. One, because the production value and the cinematography and the writing were just plain bad, but also he just went out of his way to ignore the source material and make it his own thing. Like in Far Cry, for instance, Jack Carver is supposed to be a American Special Forces operative, but Uwe Boll made him into a German Special Forces operative. And not only that, but he filmed every single one of his movies in Vancouver because it was really cheap to film them in Vancouver. So, like, Far Cry is supposed to take place on a tropical island, but you can tell pretty obviously that the island that the Uwe Boll Far Cry movie takes place on is obviously somewhere in Vancouver. But anyways, like, going back to what I was saying earlier, it was a major curse throughout the 2000s, like the major meme about like the whole, oh, the video game movie curse, you know, like every video game movie is bad, you know, and there was a lot of merit to that for the longest time, at least until Castlevania came along. Like, Castlevania basically opened up the floodgates, pretty much, and proved that video game adaptations can be good. In fact, there is no reason for them to not be good in this day and age. Like, Castlevania proved that there is absolutely no excuse for video game adaptations to be bad nowadays, especially when you've got so many amazing video games that you could adapt nowadays. Like, imagine, if you will, an aspiring young director comes up with an idea to do a Doom movie that's essentially just John Wick with demons. That's essentially what a Doom movie should be. In fact, there's already is a blueprint for what a Doom movie should be in this day and age, which is the film Hardcore Henry, which was filmed entirely using a helmet with 2 GoPros mounted on it. And it was literally filmed like a first-person shooter. Like, you had Sharlto Copley's character as like the quest giver, and you had the main protagonist, Henry, being the player character of this first-person shooter movie. That's literally all you'd have to do. Just take that and put the story of Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal over it, and you've got the perfect Doom movie. Like, that would be perfect. But then again, there are certain games that just shouldn't be adapted into... that just won't make for good movies no matter what. Like, for example, Candy Crush and most mobile games, to be honest. Like most mobile games just aren't that conducive to telling, like, a really long-form story. Like, Angry Birds, for instance, like, Angry Birds is just a dumb fun mobile game that you play while you're sitting on the toilet, or, like, in a subway or whatever, and you're just trying to kill some time from going from point A to point B, basically. You know, it doesn't have a complicated story, and it doesn't need to, because it's not supposed to be a complicated game or anything like that. Compare this, on the other hand, to a game like BioShock. BioShock would be, or Dead Space, especially. Dead Space and BioShock are 2 examples of games that would be much more conducive to movies than games like Candy Crush would be. Like, and John Carpenter is the guy who directed They Live, he did The Thing, and so many other really iconic movies, is a big proponent of video games and a big fan of video games as an art form. And he's actually stated in multiple interviews that he thinks Dead Space would make a fantastic space horror movie, and he said that he actually wanted to write and direct a Dead Space movie, and I honestly really hope he does. Like, especially since he's got his own horde shooter game coming out, Toxic Commando. I'm honestly surprised that he hasn't made an announcement like, I'm gonna go ahead and do that Dead Space movie now. You know, like, if anyone could do a good Dead Space movie, it's John Carpenter. And I was also thinking as well about probably one of the most egregious examples of a bad video game adaptation that had absolutely no right to be as bad as it was, which was Halo. Halo is iconic. Halo is one of the, not just one of the most iconic, but one of the best video game franchises ever made, or ever created. And the show, which was in development hell for 10 plus years, came out, and it was just so utterly awful. Like, how is it even possible for something to be that bad? Like, they desperately wanted their show, Paramount desperately wanted that show to be Star Wars meets The Expanse, and it just doesn't work the way they did it. Because Halo isn't Star Wars. Like, you could probably do story element cherry picking from The Expanse as, like, frame of reference for the story, but let's be honest, it just doesn't work the way they executed it. There especially wasn't any excuse when you take into consideration the creative team behind it. The showrunner for Paramount's Halo was the guy who did Peaky Blinders. Peaky Blinders was freaking great. And you had Steven Spielberg himself as executive producer. Like, that guy did Jaws, he did Band of Brothers, he did AI Artificial Intelligence, and he did The Pacific as well, and he's doing another miniseries as a companion piece to the Pacific and Band of Brothers for Apple TV. Like the list of works that Steven Spielberg has had a hand in is just endless. Like, there was absolutely no reason for the Halo show to be as bad as it was. There is absolutely no excuse for how bad it turned out. In fact, I was so utterly frustrated by how bad that show was that I actually went through and wrote my own series Bible for my own Halo TV show out of spite and frustration. And I literally just finished it like less than a week ago too, like top to bottom. And the way I would have done it is I would have done it as basically what I call a semi-anthology format. And if you don't know what I'm talking about when I say that, is it would basically be structured like American Horror Story, in that each season would be its own self-contained mini-series with its own overarching storyline and its own characters and its own setting within the mainline Halo universe. None of that silver timeline crap, okay? Like the corporate shill media and all the people who do like the show can cope about how, oh, it's an alternate timeline, so it's not canon. It doesn't change the fact that the show was garbage. Like, you can say alternate timeline as much as you want, so the 2005 Doom movie was also an alternate timeline from the games. And guess what? That movie was terrible too. Like, just because it's an alternate timeline doesn't mean you can excuse all the fact that it was a bad show. In fact, I would say it's even less of an excuse for it being bad. Like, there's absolutely no reason, come hell or high water, that the show should have been as bad as it was. And you can say alternate timeline as much as you want. It doesn't change the fact that it was terrible. Okay? It was terrible. The dialogue was clunky. The plot line was completely nonsensical. There was a complete, total, and utter open disregard for the source material by the creative team and by 343 Industries because they didn't want to be constrained by what had been done before. Look, if you don't want to be constrained by what had come before, then tell a new story set within the mainline universe. Adapt one of the books. Adapt one of the comics. It's really not that hard. Like you easily could have done Contact Harvest, taken the book Contact Harvest and adapted that as like an HBO Band of Brothers style miniseries, and it would have been infinitely better than what we got. Like, hell, I'm not even joking when I say Paramount could literally have just taken Band of Brothers, the entire story, right down to the characters and dialogue, and reskinned them all as ODSTs instead of the 101st Airborne during the Second World War, and it would have been 100 million times better than what we got. In fact, that's the general consensus in the Halo fandom nowadays, is the fact that if you want to do a good Halo show, all you have to do is just copy-paste Band of Brothers and reskin it with ODSTs. Heck, that's what I would have done if I'd done a Halo show. I would have done for my first season of the semi-anthology show that I came up with, basically just Band of Brothers with ODSTs. And have it set during the Harvest campaign, which was the first major engagement of the Human Covenant War. I mean, like, it's really not that difficult to comprehend why people get frustrated when you have stuff like Arcane and I got squashed there for a second, and I got squashed again. Thank goodness for big health pickups. When you've got stuff like Arcane and Castlevania and the HBO Last of Us show, which is far superior to the game, might I add, because it actually fleshes out various story elements that didn't get fleshed out in the game. Like, there is no reason for video game adaptations to be bad nowadays. Like, but when you get, like, in the past, you could at least excuse it because Hollywood didn't really understand video games and just how much of a juggernaut they were becoming in the early 2000s, but, how much, and, I lost track of what I was saying there, but, so video games were basically were still pretty much a very stigmatized hobby in the late 90s. in the mid to late 90s, but by the early 2000s, video games were well on their way to becoming the multi-billion-dollar juggernaut of an industry they are nowadays. And mostly, Hollywood just looked at this as just a cheap cash grab because, again, they still weren't able to comprehend just how complicated video games were becoming. Video games were becoming an art form, and but meanwhile, you had guys like Roger Ebert coming out and saying video games aren't art and they can never be art. Which, dude, if you've ever played Red Dead Redemption or Red Dead Redemption 2, you would swallow your words immediately. Like, can you talk about foot in mouth? Like, seriously. Anyways, like, what was I gonna say? Sometimes it's hard to keep track of what I'm talking about when I'm ranting about stuff like this, because I just get so caught up in the heat of the moment that I just lose track of what I'm saying, but, you can do, like, as I said, Castlevania and Arcane and the Sonic movies and HBO's The Last of Us are proof that there is absolutely no excuse, and even Detective Pikachu as well. There is absolutely no excuse, there's absolutely no rhyme or reason for video game adaptations to be bad nowadays. There's absolutely no reason for them to be. And if anything, if they keep coming out really bad like that, like they did with the Halo show, like they did with the 2005 Doom movie, like they did with the 2019 reboot Doom Annihilation, like, it honestly is kind of even worse because of the fact that stuff like Castlevania and the Sonic movies and Detective Pikachu and others and HBO's The Last of Us have been coming out. There's even less excuse for them to be bad now. Like, there already was no excuse for them to begin with, considering how great video games had gotten up until that point, but like, when Castlevania came along and blew everything out of the water and proved that video game adaptations and that the curse could be broken, and that video game adaptations could not only be not terrible, but they could actually be legitimately fantastic, like, all the more reason for there to be more truly great video game adaptations coming out. Like, it's especially frustrating for me because when you look at something like the Halo show, that show was in development hell for over 10 years. And they had Steven Spielberg attached to the project. Steven Spielberg, the guy who did Jaws, the guy who did Indiana Jones, the guy who did Jurassic Park, the guy who did AI Artificial Intelligence, the guy who did Band of Brothers in the Pacific, you know, like, the guy who did Saving Private Ryan. Like, there is absolutely no reason for the Halo show to have been as bad as it was when you consider the fact that they had Steven Spielberg attached to the project. Okay, so I'm gonna break it down for you, right? Here's how the Halo show should have been. It opens up with us on Planet Reach with a group of ODSTs. And that group of ODSTs are recruits. They're coming over from different branches. Like, some of them are fresh out of Ranger School. Some of them are fresh out of Special Forces training. Some of them are just raw recruits fresh out of basic training. But they're all hoping to become ODSTs. And the first episode follows them going through the brutal training, the brutal, I'm playing Brutal Doom, I made a new word, a brutal, combination of brutal and grueling. But going through the brutal and grueling training process it takes to become an ODST. And then by the end of the episode, the alarms are blaring, and they receive the word that they're being shipped out to Harvest to go and fight the Covenant when they signed up to fight insurrectionists instead. And the rest of the season follows them trying to survive the Harvest campaign, which was the first major engagement of the Human Covenant War. Like, that one complete storyline idea alone is already infinitely better than what Paramount gave us with their pathetic attempt at a Halo show. I mean, you know, companies, right? Like, they're always going to find a way to screw it up. Here we go. Now we got the, moving on from my rant for a second here, we've got the, Brutal Doom version of the plasma rifle. I really, really like what this mod does with the plasma rifle. Like, the plasma rifle was already one of my favorite weapons in Doom to begin with, but, the Brutal Doom just takes the plasma rifle and makes it even better, like such as with the alternate fire mode there. And what the alternate fire mode essentially does is it turns it into a shotgun, a plasma shotgun, in addition to the automatic plasma rifle. Anyways, away from that tangent. So, in conclusion, there's absolutely no, with shows like Castlevania and Arcane on Netflix, and movies like the Sonic movies and Detective Pikachu, and shows like HBO's The Last of Us, there is legitimately no reason whatsoever for video game adaptations to be bad anymore. There's absolutely zero excuse, and everyone who does make a bad video game adaptation nowadays should get made fun of even more than they already were. Because there is absolutely no excuse for video game adaptations to be bad nowadays. And there we go. Refinery completed. Here we are. I remember the first time I played through on Brutal Doom. It had been a while since I played through Doom properly, and I had forgotten how to actually get through this level. So I would spend like a good 20 to 30 minutes just running around trying to figure out how to get out of here. But luckily, I remember it too, though. So, where's the thing here? There's a way to lower these somewhere. I think it is, you have to, it's like the one secret on E1 map 2. There it is. To open this up and let these guys out so you can get the secret. This is another addition to Brutal Doom here. You've got the experiment test tubes here, and occasionally, if you shoot them, these red skeletons will pop out, which are essentially supposed to be humans that have been experimented on with demonic DNA. Like, they're pulling some, like, Jurassic Park type stuff in there. Speaking as well of no excuses for specific things nowadays, that reminds me of the Star Wars sequels. There was no reason whatsoever for the Star Wars sequels to have been as bad as they were. Like, Disney... No, not Disney. George Lucas had written a screen treatments for the sequel trilogy. And they sound... And I read those screen... No, that's wrong. I was thinking of something else. And, like, he had written screen treatments for the sequel trilogy that would have involved Luke rebuilding the Jedi Order. And I would have taken that over what we got any day of the week. Like, no disrespect intended to, like, the cast and the crew. Like, they did the best job with what they were given, but the creative team behind it were just such, like... And J.J. Abrams admitted this, that there was no plan going into it. They were literally making it up as they went along. And if you're going to do a follow-up to one of the most beloved trilogies in film history, you've really, the expectations are going to be really high. And objectively speaking, The Force Awakens is the best film of the sequel trilogy, even though it is literally just a shot-for-shot remake of A New Hope. Like, it starts on a desert planet, they escape from the desert planet, they go to fight the fascist empire or whatever, and then they go and blow up the giant space death ball weapon. And then, like, The Force Awakens was derivative, absolutely, but it wasn't bad. It at least wasn't bad. But then you got Rian Johnson coming along, who tosses everything that was set up in The Force Awakens, and makes a standalone spin-off movie out of what was supposed to be the second film of a trilogy. And what's the result? A giant freaking mess. That's the result. Before I go any further, I just want to say, if you're wondering why I've got the demon hands and the arms here, that's another feature of Brutal Doom, is you can find demon spheres, which will turn you into Barons of Hell and the Revenants temporarily. It's a really cool mechanic that's added in with the mod. But anyways, as I was saying about Star Wars, like for example, so Rian Johnson comes on board for The Last Jedi. Does he, since he's directing the second film of a trilogy, he's got to at least know that he has a responsibility to pay off the things that were set up in the first film, and then set up things for the final film. Guess what? He didn't. He tossed everything out of the window, all in the name of subverting expectations. Oh, I'm subverting expectations. I'm not gonna lie, I hate Rian Johnson. I really hate him. Like, he is without doubt the single most overpaid tool in an industry of overpaid tools. Like his whole thing is, oh, I'm subverting expectations. Dude, if you want to see subverting expectations, watch a David Fincher movie. Like, people don't want to watch Star Wars to have their expectations subverted. They want to have their expectations exceeded. Like, you should have gone above and beyond what they expected. Instead, I died on the easiest difficulty in Brutal Doom. That shows you how much of a noob I am. Anyways. So, this is the Fire Axe, by the way. It's another one of the new Brutal Doom weapons. And one of the cool things you can do with it is you can... oh, no, wait. No, wait. That was in Project Brutality. Wrong mod. But anyways, going back to what I was saying, Rian Johnson comes along, and he decides to toss everything out the window, all in the name of subverting expectations. Like, J.J. Abrams set up Finn as the main character, John Boyega's character, as the main character of this trilogy. Like, and that would have been incredible. Like, imagine the story of a disillusioned stormtrooper become, like even the trailers showed Finn fighting off Kylo Ren with a lightsaber. Like, Imagine what could have been if they had gone that route of following the storyline of a disillusioned stormtrooper becoming a Jedi. That would have been incredible. Like, I would have paid so much money to see that. That could have been amazing. And they absolutely squandered that potential. Lucasfilm and Disney absolutely squandered the potential of the sequel trilogy, and they completely shafted John Boyega in the process. Like, they went out of their way to screw over John Boyega, all in the name of getting those precious Chinese movie theater dollars, because China is incredibly racist against black people. Like, if you don't believe me, just look at the Chinese movie poster for The Force Awakens, like, and compare it to the American release poster. Like, all you have to see is the fact that they deliberately downsized the picture of John Boyega on that poster. And they deliberately downsized his role from being a main character to being a comic relief side character. Basically, they turned him into the Jar Jar Binks of the sequel trilogy. Like, and it's a shame as well, because John Boyega is absolutely fantastic actor. Like, he is superb. Like, that man single-handedly carried Pacific Rim Uprising on his shoulders. He carried that movie on his shoulders with his performance. And, and you could really tell that, not only that, but he was also a huge fan of Star Wars. Like, so you can imagine, like, how depressing it must have been for him to be directly shafted working on your favorite franchise. Like, and he talked about this in interviews that because of how he was treated in the sequel trilogy, he's never going to work with Disney again. And frankly, I don't blame him. Like, Disney just is not the company it once was. And especially, like, Star Wars, to be fair, Star Wars has been a mixed bag under Disney. Sometimes they put out some good stuff like The Mandalorian and you know, the last season of the Clone Wars, and, you know, Rebels, and, of course, Rogue One. Rogue One is by far the best Disney Star Wars movie ever made. But, like, they've also had a lot of real stinkers as well, like the sequel trilogy, like Book of Boba Fett, and what was the other one? I forgot what it was. Anyways, so Star Wars has just been a really mixed bag for the most part. And but there was no excuse for it to have been such a mixed bag, is basically my point. You know, there's no excuse for the sequels to have been as bad as they were. There's no excuse for the Book of Boba Fett to have been as subpar as it was. There's no reason for The Mandalorian Season 3 to have been as subpar as it was. Like, seriously. I mean, come on. Like, how hard is it to just do something good with a beloved IP? How hard is it? Another example of kind of like inept and incompetent people doing inept and incompetent things with beloved IPs is by far the most egregious example of this, in my opinion, is Netflix's The Witcher. Like the Netflix was given on a silver platter the holy grail of an IP. Like, The Witcher had become a global phenomenon thanks to the video games, and they had a chance to adapt the novels. And they had a perfect casting in the form of Henry Cavill, who was, and Geralt of Rivia was Henry Cavill's dream role. It was his dream role. He adored the books. He loved them. He absolutely adored them. And he loved the games too. Like, it was a dream role for him. And what does Netflix do? They hire Lauren Hissrich, who says she's going to stay true to the source material, but the second she's put in charge and production actually starts, she goes out of her way to do the exact opposite of that. And the result is, like, season 1 was good for the most part. Was it flawed? Yes, but it was good for the most part. But then season 2 came out, and that's when everything started to fall apart. And, like, Henry Cavill was voicing this in the interviews. Like, he wants it to stay as true to the source material as possible. And And what do? What do the writers do? What do Lauren Hisrich, the showrunner, and the writers' room do? They do the exact opposite of that every single time. Like, they do an absolute character assassination of Yennefer, and, like, just completely just spit all over Sapkowski's work. Like, Netflix had a golden goose, and they absolutely squandered it. And to be honest, I'm really happy that Cavill made the decision to leave the show when he did, because now he gets to go off and do Warhammer 40k on his own terms. Like, he doesn't have to go and deal with Netflix anymore, you know, and he gets to work on another one of his favorite IPs, but this time around, he's the executive producer, so he has a level of creative control he only wishes he could have had on The Witcher. And, you know, I honestly think that the only reason Netflix has split up Season 3 of The Witcher into 2 parts is just because they're trying to maximize their last bit of Cavill hype as much as possible before that goes completely away. And it will go completely away as soon as he's gone, you know, because most people who were watching The Witcher were watching it because of Henry Cavill's performance and his love for and to share in his love for the franchise. So, like, yeah, that's another example. So The Witcher's yet another example of people who don't like the IP they're working on being in charge of an IP. You know, when you hire people who don't like an IP to work on an IP, they're not going to do it in a way that doesn't do it justice. Every single time. Every single time. It's happened with Halo, it happened with Doom, it happened with Far Cry, and it happened with The Witcher. Just hire people with passion for the source material. It's really not that difficult. But yeah, I'm really excited for Henry Cavill's take on Warhammer 40k, because he is such a huge Warhammer 40k nerd. Like, he collects the miniatures and paints them. He has all the Black Library novels. He has all the codexes. He plays the war game. He plays the video games, and he immerses himself in the lore. And so, like. And to be honest, I'm surprised it wasn't announced sooner that he was doing Warhammer 40k. Like he was doing a lot of meetings with Games Workshop at their headquarters and talking with their executives. So like people were speculating like he was gonna do a deal with them, and it turned out that was in fact the case. And I think the fact, and a lot people have had apprehensions of Cavill working with Amazon to do Warhammer 40k, considering their recent performances with Lord of the Rings and the Wheel of Time. But the thing you have to remember is Games Workshop are notoriously protective of their IP. Like, they don't just hand it out to everybody willy-nilly. Like a good example of this is the fact that, and Games Workshop does, rightfully so, get a lot of flack for this, but they often have struck down fan-made content based on the Warhammer IP because of how protective they are of their IP. Which, to be honest, I can understand why they're really protective of it, but I also understand where the fans are coming from when they say that, like, there is such a thing as going too far with being protective of your stuff. But I think that in the long term, I think that has worked out in Games Workshop's favor, because one of the stipulations of Henry Cavill working on Warhammer 40k for Amazon is that he's executive producer. And now he has a level of creative control over it that he only wishes he could have had on The Witcher. Which I think is absolutely fantastic, and I think that's absolutely superb. Because he gets to bring on all the writers, he gets to bring on all the creative team and all the producers and all the directors that he feels are going to be the best qualified to bring 40K to life. A lot of people have speculated as well that Cavill himself, he's also not only producing it, but he's also starring in it as well. A lot of people have speculated he's going to be playing Inquisitor Eisenhorn, but I don't think he is, because, you know, he said in interviews that he'd rather play a Primarch, and to be honest, I can kind of understand that, especially since recently in Warhammer 40K lore, we've had 2 Loyalist Primarchs come back. In Rabute Gilliman and Lionel Johnson. So, I could see Cavill maybe trying to sneak himself in as playing Gilliman. Maybe. Like, he could dye his hair and pull it off, you know? Taking a break from the Warhammer 40K thing for a little bit. This is what I've got here is another one of the new Brutal Doom weapons, which is the light machine gun. And it's a really cool addition to the sandbox. It's kind of like a bridge between the assault rifle and the chain gun. Uses the same ammunition as both, but it's also got an alternate fire mode in the form of an underbarrel grenade launcher that uses rocket ammo for the grenades. So you've basically got 2 weapons in one, which is really cool. But anyways, back to the Warhammer 40K talk. One thing I really hope does happen with the Henry Cavill's Warhammer 40K show is the fact that he said that it's not just going to be one show either. It's going to be a whole bunch of shows covering various aspects of the 40K universe. And I don't think it would be the best idea to start straight off with Space Marines or even like go all the way back to the Horus Heresy. I think it would be best to start off with maybe like Gaunt's Ghosts or the Eisenhorn books as like a good stepping stone to build off of. Like, imagine like an X-Files style show following the adventures of Inquisitor Eisenhorn. That would be really, really cool. Personally, though, one faction I hope really gets a whole lot of love, Led Zeppelin reference there, from the Henry Cavill 40K shows is the Catachan Jungle Fighters. The Catachan Jungle Fighters are my #1 favorite 40K faction. No question, no contest. Like, they are just so utterly awesome in everything they do. Like, especially the Catachan second, the Green Vipers, under Colonel Ironhand Strachan. Like, he's one of the coolest characters in Warhammer 40K. Like he's a Imperial Guard officer who leads his men from the front, and his main catchphrase is, "Do I have to do everything myself?" Like, that's just utterly awesome. Not only that, but the Catachan 2nd Regiment also has Gunnery Sergeant StoneTooth Harker, and of course the infamous Sly Marbo. For those of you who are uninitiated in 40K lore, I'll give you one guess as to who Sly Marbo is. Supposed to be a reference to. But yeah, I definitely like to see a lot of the Imperial Guard regiments get some love in Warhammer 40, in Henry Cavill's 40K shows. Like, that'd be really cool. Especially the Catachans. I love the Catachans. I mean, what's not to love about the Catachans? They're literally an army of roided up space Rambos who are like 7 feet tall. They come from a jungle planet where literally everything and anything and everything wants to eat them alive. And, yeah, like, what's not to like about that? one thing's for sure, eventually, if they do come to it, I really think they should do the Fall of Cadia and the Resurrection of Rebude Gilliman as like a real special event miniseries. You know, like that would be something to really hype up and build up to, like as like the not quite Avengers Endgame, but maybe like the Avengers Infinity War of the Warhammer 40k universe. Like it's just such a huge monumental thing, like a Primarch coming back from the dead. Like, that would just be such a huge event to build. That would just be such a huge hype train that they could potentially build on for a 40k entry, live action entry. And one thing's for sure that's absolutely guaranteed, since hence they're doing it with Amazon, is that they're definitely going to have the budget to do it justice visually. Now, I'll always hold that storytelling trumps visuals every single time. Like, a good example of this I will always hold up is Babylon 5. Babylon 5 is one of the best sci-fi shows of the mid-90s. But, like a lot of mid-90s television shows, it has mid-90s television CGI. If you know anything about mid-90s television CGI, you'll know that while it was good for the time, it's all aged like milk. Like, I could do better CGI using Blender in my room than what they did with Babylon 5 in the 90s. But despite that, people keep coming back to Babylon 5 because of how good the story is and how good the writing is. It just goes to show you that you can have the best cast, the best set and costume design, the best cinematography, and the best production value in the world, and none of it will count for anything if your script is no good. Want an example? Just take a look at Netflix's The Witcher. Take a look at the Star Wars sequels. If you want an example of shows that don't have such good visuals, that still hold up because of their story, take a look at the original Star Wars trilogy. Take a look at the at Babylon 5. Like, I'll take dodgy visuals with an absolutely incredible story over incredible visuals with a really subpar story every single time. Here we are, another new Brutal Doom weapon, the Flamethrower. I really like this weapon, it's really cool. It's really fun to set the demons on fire, that's, which is ironic, because, you know, they're demons. Here we go. You have to be careful when you're using the flamethrower because you can set yourself on fire with it, especially in close quarters. So I think I'll stick with the shotgun for now. Here we go. Have shotgun will travel. Hey, that's the name of the video. Actually, to be honest, I was going to call this video Have Shotgun Will Travel, but now that I'm thinking about it, I've ranted so much about about bad video game adaptations, I'll probably just call it the video game adaptation rant. You know, like, that'd probably make more sense than Have Shotgun Will Travel. I'll save that title for the next video, to be honest. And I just got slaughtered. Because I am a giant, giant noob. Let's go this way, here. Let's reload. Locked, loaded, and ready to go. But the talk about ranting about Star Wars, it reminds me a lot of something I really hate. The thing I hate most about the new Star Wars sequels is how Rian Johnson seemingly, when he took over to direct the second film in the sequel trilogy, The Last Jedi, he seemed to want to go out of his way to make the Star Wars fandom hate each other more than they already did. Like, things were already divisive between fans of the original trilogy and fans of the prequels, but then you had the sequel trilogy, which seemed to be looking up, but then you made this The Last Jedi, and you went out of your way to make it as divisive as you could possibly make it, because, as you said in one of your own interviews, you're more interested in people arguing about a movie than you are in actually making a good movie. Like you went out of your way to make a toxic fandom even more toxic than it already was. Like, come on, dude. Like, and you wonder why everyone hates you? Like, you took something that was already contentious and made it even worse. Come on. And not only that, but you also normalized the trends started by Paul Feig with his terrible 2016 Ghostbusters movie of gaslighting the audience for not liking your garbage movie. Like, this was a trend when Ghostbusters 2016 came out, right? It was terrible. No one liked it. Literally no one liked it except for like Reset Era and Kotaku, right? Actually, did Kotaku like it or not? I don't remember. But anyways, except for mostly film critics and, you know, people who spend way too much time on the Reset Era forums, like, nobody liked the 2016 Ghostbusters movie. And what did Paul Feig do? Instead of taking the L, like a normal human being, he just said, there's no way anyone could dislike my thing. They must be misogynists because the cast is all women. Are you kidding me, dude? Come on. You are huffing weapons-grade copium, my guy. Like, just take the L, okay? Take the frickin' L. Just own up to it. Okay, like, I had this idea. I thought it was good. I guess it wasn't. We can try again next time. But instead, he set this precedent of whenever someone does a reboot of an established IP and people don't like it, instead of just taking the L and admitting to your mistakes and trying again in the to do better in the future, you just say, no, it's not, I'm not the problem, you're the problem, you're toxic fans. You're just terrible and toxic, you know, like my garbage or you're a bigot and all that. You know, it's that trend of gaslighting that continued through in the sequel trilogy and so many other newer reboots and remakes of beloved IPs that is just so pervasive in the entertainment industry nowadays. Is it always the case? No, but it is pretty common. Like, it's too common. Like, we're already living in a day and age where everything is really divisive, do we really need to go out of our way to make things more divisive than they already are? Just so we can satisfy our own egos? No, we shouldn't. So why are you doing it? I mean, come on. But, you know, it's not just, like, subpar writers who like to gaslight their audience for not liking their stuff that's the problem in entertainment media nowadays. The problem is also, like, this kind of, like, emphasis on quantity over quality. Like, I always like to see my favorite franchises get new entries, okay? Who doesn't, you know? Like, it's always good to see more of what you like. But there is such a thing as too much more. So, like, a good example of this is, of course, the Marvel films. Like, there is such a thing as superhero fatigue, and the Marvel Cinematic Universe is living proof of that. It does. It's mostly comes down to the fact that most of the movies aren't very good. Like, Guardians of the Galaxy is probably among the only Marvel MCU films, anyway, that can be considered truly great. I mean, Black Panther was pretty good, but that was mostly carried by the performances of the cast. Like, the cast in Black Panther carried that movie on their shoulders. Like, if it wasn't for that cast, it honestly would have been just a pretty blanded, generic MCU film. Oh, crap, not again. And it's a booby trap. And it died. Again. You know, I was thinking about the new Indiana Jones that's coming, the Dial of Destiny, right? And why Disney nowadays seems to be so obsessed with this kind of grumpy old man trope that they established in the Star Wars sequels. Of, like, instead of having these established and beloved classic characters be mentors to the new generation, they are grumpy old men who have to be coaxed into doing what they have to do into by the newer generation. Like, a good example of this is, of course, most infamous example of this is, of course, the is Luke Skywalker in the sequels. Like, the Luke Skywalker in the sequels is not the Luke Skywalker we all know and love. Like, and I know that was completely intentional, but it does, like, how? Like, was literally no logical reason for the guy who put down his own weapon because he didn't want to kill his own father. Like, the Palpatine was trying to manipulate Luke into killing Darth Vader, and he wouldn't. He refused because he was a better person than that. This is the guy who held out hope, no matter what, that he could still save his father. And he did. Like, why would you want to portray that character that way in the Star Wars sequels? Like, come on. Like, I know I'm probably gonna trigger sequel fans for saying that, but I'm sorry, but if you're still a sequel fan, like, it's been 5 years. You can stop pretending that The Last Jedi is a good movie now, okay? Anyone who says that The Last Jedi is actually a good movie is huffing weapons-grade copium, especially this many years after the movie came out. Like, it's been 5 years. You can stop shilling for Disney now. Seriously. The Star Wars sequels were not good, okay? They were not good. For instance, I grew up with the prequels. Like, I will hold that the prequels actually were good all along. I grew up with them, and, you know, like, a good example that I will always hold up of why the prequels are better than the sequels is, at the end of the day, for all their flaws, and they were many, the prequels were still one man's passion project. You know, Nostalgia Critic pointed it out the best, you know. He asked the question, whose movies are the sequels? You know, if you look at the prequel trilogy and the original trilogy, you'll say, those are George Lucas's movies. He was the creative driving force behind them. He made those movies because he had a story he wanted to tell. Whereas the sequels feel like they were made by a big studio for simply to make money, and nothing more, nothing less. And there's nothing wrong with making money, but, like, again, like, I know which ones I would pick to rewatch over and over and over again, and I do rewatch over and over and over again. Like, and another example of why I'll always hold that the prequels are superior to the sequels is that the prequels gave us the extended universe books, the Clone Wars, KOTOR, Bounty Hunter, and Force Unleashed, and as well as the single greatest lightsaber duel, live-action lightsaber duel in the history of the franchise, in the form of Duel of the Fates. Like, that is the greatest lightsaber duel in the entire franchise, bar none. Not only that, but it also gave us so many classic memes. And while the sequel trilogy gave us memes too, the sequel trilogy was memed because people hated it, not because people loved it. You know, I was thinking earlier, a couple of days ago, about, you know, what reboot or remake would actually make sense. Like, for instance, Disney announced recently that they're doing a live-action remake of Moana, a movie that's not even 10 years old. Like, why? There is absolutely no reason from an artistic standpoint to do a remake of Moana. Like, at least you could, like, justify, like, it's been X amount of years since Cinderella or Sleeping Beauty or The Lion King. Like, you could at least somewhat justify there being a remake of those. But Moana, a movie that came out in 2016, not even 10 years ago, you're doing a remake of. Like, come on. Like, if anything, you should do a remake of Song of the South to make it slightly less racist. Like, come on. There is absolutely no logical, creative reason to do a remake of Moana. So you know the only reason they're doing it is as a cash grab. Like, I'll always hold that for certain things, animation is just a better medium than live action. Like, because there are certain things in animation that you can get away with that you just can't in live action. And which is what makes it such a great artistic medium. And it's really a shame that animation isn't taken as seriously as an artistic medium in the West as it is in Japan, for instance. Like animation is more than just a way to tell a story in Japan. It's like considered an art form. Like, people really want to strive. People in Japan generally really want to strive to be part of a big anime studio. And it's treated as an art form over there. Like, it's not taken as seriously. Like, when was the last time animation in America was used to tell a really mature adult story? Like, I certainly can't think of anything off the top of my head, because animation in America is generally seen as something for kids and not for adults. And I honestly really wish that, like, the only adult animation we really get in America is generally stuff like Family Guy, you know, which is adult animated comedies. And I'm not trying to rag on Family Guy or anything, but, you know, like it would be nice to see, like, a serious, mature storyline and topic covered in an animated story, you know? Like, and it does happen in America occasionally, but, you know, it doesn't get as much publicity as I feel it should. For example, on Netflix, there's this miniseries called The Liberator, which is a kind of Band of Brothers style miniseries about World War II. It follows an infantry unit in the Second World War called the Thunderbirds. They were based out of Oklahoma, and they were one of the most ethnically diverse units of the Second World War. They were made up of Dust Bowl cowboys, Mexican Americans, and Native Americans. Guys who couldn't even drink together in the same bars back stateside at the time. And they were fighting together from the invasion of Italy all the way to the end of the war, non-stop for 5 days. And it is utterly sublime, and it's 100% fully animated. Not only is it animated, they used rotoscope animation for it, which means they literally took live-action actors and hand-drew over the footage to give it this almost like comic book-esque aesthetic, which I absolutely adore. You know, it's absolutely fantastic. Like, it's honestly proof that animation can be used as a really serious medium to tell really serious stories. Especially with rotoscope animation, because rotoscope animation is notoriously time-consuming and difficult. It's why you rarely ever see it happen anymore. But yeah, I really wish that animation was taken more seriously as a medium over here in the West as it is in Japan. Like, it's one of the reasons why I love anime so much is the fact that anime is more often than not, used to tell some really serious storylines. Like, Cowboy Bebop tackles a lot of really serious mature and adult themes, like camaraderie, depression, drugs, you know, like, was it that Cowboy Bebop or was it something else? But anyways, Cowboy Bebop tackles a lot of really mature issues in its storyline, and same with Afro Samurai. You know, Afro Samurai is utterly sublime. You know, like why can't we have more stuff like that over here? Like, that could be kind of cool. Which is one of the reasons why I love Castlevania so much, is the fact that it is a very mature animated story. And it it uses the medium of animation to tell a very mature storyline in a very mature way. It also helps that Castlevania is one of the best video game adaptations ever made. So there's that. There we go, yellow card. Another mention of my favorite band. Well, one of my favorite bands anyways. You know, the other day after talking about yellow card in my last video, I was thinking about, you know, what are some of the most overrated bands in history? And I can immediately name two off the top of my head. The Smiths and Rage Against the Machine. Like, it's not even up for contest. Those two bands are two of the single most overrated bands in history. Like, let's start off with the Smiths. The Smiths are not that special, okay? I know I'm gonna piss people off for saying that, but the Smiths are not that special. Like, what have they done that's so special, musically speaking? Not that much, because they were more or less doing the exact same thing in the early 1980s that The Cure had been doing since the mid to late 70s. Like, The Cure had been around for 5 or 6 years by the time the Smiths got going, and they were doing, and the Smiths, all the Smiths did was just do the same thing that The Cure did, but did it more photogenically. And without the makeup. Like, that's the only reason that the Smiths got as big as they were, was because Morrissey was really photogenic, and, you know, girls would swoon over him all the time. And that brings me on to my next point about why the Smiths are one of the most overrated bands of all time, being Morrissey himself. Like, he's just such an arrogant jack-off. It doesn't help the fact either that he's a complete and utter eco-fascist, too. Like, he doesn't even want to talk to people who, like, I'm not sure if that's actually true or not, but I've heard through the grapevine that, he doesn't even like talking to people who aren't vegetarians like he is. Like, it doesn't help the fact that he's also said some pretty racist stuff about, you know, countries like China and other places in Southeast Asia, because of their culture of wet markets. Like, if you want to criticize the wet market culture in some Southeast Asian countries, that's fine, but don't be racist about it, dude. Come on. Here we are, Tower of Babel. This is the final boss battle. Here's hoping I actually pull this off and I don't die like a noob again. Right, where's the Cyber Demon? There he is. And I died almost immediately. Yeah, get him, Marines, get him. Down the plasma rifle guy, down minigun guy. No, minigun guy's, oh no, minigun guy's dead. This. Let's go find the Cyber Demon and take him down. Oh, there he is. Come on. I didn't grab all the ammo, did I? Nope. No ammo. Alright, here we go. Ammo. And plenty of it. Ah, exploits right here. Go on, poke your head out. Come on. Oh, come on. Ugh. You know what? I'll probably just call it quits here now. So I ranted a lot about Halo and Star Wars, and I got slaughtered by the Cyber Demon. Well, could have been worse. Thanks a lot for tuning in for this video. I'm gonna head to the editing room and make edits if I need to, and post it to the channel. Be sure to like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. It helps me grow, helps me increase my reach, and it helps me to get closer to getting monetized as well, so I can actually get paid for doing this. So, thanks a lot for tuning in. I'll see you guys next time. Peace!